the most important ingredient in a successful relationship. When someone's relationship ends, friends and family kind of rally around them and they give them tea and biscuits and normally the very same bit of advice, that they should spend some time alone finding out who they are before they get into another relationship. And the person goes, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. I really need to do that. I really need to sort myself, work on me, have some me time. That's what I'm going to do. And then as soon as they get the first bit of flash of attention or the flash of ankle, and they jump into bed with the first person who does that for them, figuratively speaking, and also sometimes not figuratively speaking whatsoever. And before they know it, they've developed some feelings for this person, they've got into a relationship, and then they're in another relationship straight away. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying if that's how you've ended up in your current relationship, that relationship is wrong or doomed or anything. I'm just saying that there is an important ingredient which needs to be in a relationship in order for it to work and in order to give it the best chance of success. And this thing is very, very complex and very, very simple. You have to love yourself and accept yourself. Here's why. Relationships end for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes they end very amicably. Sometimes people just grow apart. Sometimes there's some infidelity. Sometimes situations force people apart. There's all sorts of reasons why relationships end. But no matter how a relationship is ended, it always results in a massive change. Now, this is the ideal time for you to actually find out who you are and, all the things that have bothered you about yourself within the relationship, or, even if they're bothering even before that now this moment here, that's where you're at right now, is the perfect time for you to work on that and to start building that sense of self-acceptance and of self-love. The ideal relationship will have two people in it, and both of them will be in a place where they accept themselves and they love themselves also. That means that they'll be able to do all of the things that you would want a relationship to have in it, like honesty, compassion, understanding, loyalty, trust, passion, sex. All of those things will are almost a given once self-acceptance is there from both parties. But the truth is that a lot of people struggle with this idea of self-acceptance and self-love, and as a result, things aren't quite like that, and they ultimately become a lot more kind of tangled up and a lot more complicated, where people struggle with the honesty side, they struggle with the trust side of things because they don't have this self-love and they don't have this self-acceptance. And just to be clear, when I say self-love, I'm not talking about vanity, I'm not talking about ego, I'm talking about looking at yourself, accepting every little thing that you would be considered inverted commas wrong with you, and just saying, yeah, this is me though. And getting past the acceptance stage of that and moving into I love that about myself actually. Not everyone is going to, but I love that about myself. When acceptance is missing from both or either side, it can start to create imbalances within the relationship, which, they may be small to begin with, but if nothing changes within that, they are just going to keep going on that steady decline. And ultimately, it can lead to there being bigger problems and arguments within the relationship. Now, no one really goes into a relationship going, well, I hope this relationship lasts maybe 2 to 3 years. That would be perfect for me. Most people go into a relationship, if they're serious about having a proper relationship, thinking that they want it to be a forever type thing. And that's perfectly understandable. But without this self-acceptance on one or either side, these imbalances lead to problems further down the line. So the very best thing that you can do if you want your next relationship to be a successful one is to reach a point of self-acceptance and self-love. Now, ideally, the person you get into a relationship with will have that as well, but you're not in control of that. And if you're not in control of something, then there's nothing you can do about it. So you can just control your bit of it. You control your part of the self-love and self-acceptance. And if someone hasn't got that, maybe it's a case of, I like all this about them, but they haven't got this. So I'm out, I'm afraid. Despite all of the other stuff, I need you to actually accept yourself, because otherwise things could potentially go wrong. I'm not saying that's how it's going to go down, but once you love and accept yourself, you can decide your own boundaries. You can decide what you're willing to accept from other people, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. So this is why the time after a relationship finishes is the absolute perfect time to do exactly what everyone tells you to do, to spend some time alone, to give yourself some space, to not have interference from other people, and actually find out who you are. Find out who you are as a single person, and move on once you've got to that point. And that's going to give you the best chance of success in a future relationship. Now, if you're listening to this and you're already in a relationship, then you can still do the same thing. You can still take that time to find out who you are, find out how to accept and love yourself, because that is going to give the best chance of your current relationship being more successful. What can happen if you don't love yourself? Now, let's say that you don't love yourself. You have various different flaws which you cannot get over, and you just don't like things about yourself, and you can't see why anyone would ever like you. But let's say you match with someone on a popular dating app, and let's say that you go on a date and you get on pretty well, despite all your flaws and how awful a person you are and everything you don't like about yourself. You get on really well, and it goes from there, and you go on a few more dates, and you laugh and you smile and you dine and you have sex, and there's passion, there's communication, there's honesty, and it's great. And then you realize something horrific, something really, really awful about the other person. They like you. They like you a lot, in fact. But hang on a minute. What about this about you? What about this flaw here? What about the fact that you're hideous? What about the fact that you are unstable? What about the fact that all of the things you don't like about yourself? What about all of those flaws? Hang on a minute. If this person likes me and I've got all of these flaws going on, what's wrong with them? What is wrong? There must be something wrong with that person if they can like me. Because I'm like this, and I'm disgusting, and I'm hideous, and I'm all of these things that I think I am. How can... Right, okay, sorry. I don't know what it is that's wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you, so I'm going to push you away. And this is what tends to happen when people really struggle with the self-acceptance side of things, is that once someone does like them, they struggle to believe the veracity or they struggle to have belief in the other person's intentions, because if they don't like themselves, how can someone else like them? So they end up pushing perfectly good suitors away because they don't accept themselves. And what about the alternative where you do have self-acceptance? Well, you go onto popular dating apps, you match with someone and you feel good about yourself. So when you go through the process of dating and kissing and having sex and getting on and smiling and dining and all of the wonderful things, when you understand that they like you, you go, well, of course they do. Why wouldn't they like me? I'm wonderful. I'm great. Why wouldn't you like me? Of course you like me. And you get on great and things go well from there. Or maybe they're in the position where they haven't got that level of self-acceptance and they're the one that freak out and push you away. That's why it's important to have it on both sides. The impact of missing self-love in a relationship. When self-love is missing from a relationship, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it can create imbalances within the relationship. So let's say you're starting from a point where you don't love yourself. Now, if you don't love yourself, then you're already going to be positioning yourself as a kind of, inverted commas, lesser than your partner. Now, this positioning which you've created yourself by your lack of self-love creates a situation where, because you're lesser than them, you are always looking up to them thinking, if I don't do something, then I'm going to lose this person, because they are a deity, they are God, they are a goddess, they are perfection, and I'm down here and I'm nothing. So you go above and beyond the call of duty constantly, trying to scrabble around, doing everything that they ask you to do, trying to please them in all sorts of ways, sexual or otherwise, just trying to do everything you possibly can to make sure that they are kept happy. Because if they're not kept happy, then they're going to realize that you aren't amazing because you don't even love yourself. And what happens is any boundaries or rules that you've set yourself regarding relationships started to get pushed. And as things continue, they get bent and then they get pushed a bit further and then they get broken. And before you know it, all of your boundaries that you set yourself before you went into the relationship have been bent or broken because you haven't been able to love yourself. So you've had to do everything within your power, according to you at least, to keep this person in love with you. So the relationship carries on because the other person's kept happy and you're doing everything you possibly can to keep them happy, and you're doing everything you possibly can to make sure that each day goes by with a smile on their face and there's no arguments and there's no problems or issues whatsoever. You do everything you possibly can, but at what cost to your own self-worth? What are you doing to your mental health by sacrificing your core values and the things which you hold dearest to you? What is that doing to you mentally? And then there'll be times when you are pushed just that little bit too far and you do find some inner strength, and that's when the arguments flash up. That's when these flashpoints and arguments kind of are created, and you bicker and you kind of make your points, and then you calm down and you talk about it, and then promises are made about changes and what each person's going to do to make things right, and then nothing in particular changes, and then you realize that because you don't love yourself, you're the one that has to change. You're the one that has to make the differences. So you go back to doing everything you possibly can to try and make things work. And what about this from a partner's perspective? Well, initially they're looking at this person coming into a relationship thinking, oh my God, I have lucked out. This person, not only are they incredible and amazing and everything I love about them, but they are doing absolutely everything for me. They are like they're running around going above and beyond the call of duty. So I found this incredible person and they're like this. How lucky am I? That's how it starts out. And maybe later on you recognize that, or the partner recognizes that, they're doing too much. They don't have to do all this stuff. And they go into kind of validation and reassurance mode that, no, you don't have to do that. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy doing this. You don't have to do all that for me. But nothing changes because the other person, you in this example, are still not loving yourself, and you still feel you have to do those things despite the reassurance from your partner, because self-love has to come from you. But it's already broken, because the moment that the partner tries to help you with your issues, all of a sudden you realize that they've realized that you're flawed. You have all these flaws and they know it. Oh shit, you've got to hide it. You've got to do even more to make sure that all of these flaws that you believe that you've got are hidden from your partner. Your boundaries have crumbled, your core values are all over the place, and your self-worth is dangling by an absolute thread. And yet somehow this person still loves you. What's wrong with them? How can they love me? How can they love me when I have this, my boundaries are gone, they can walk all over me like a doormat, and I still come back and do all of the things for them? How can they possibly love me? What is wrong with them? And then you start looking for flaws in your partner. And because they're human, they will have flaws. You will find them, and things start falling apart. Now, I appreciate that it is a very, very linear example of what can happen, but I'm not going to go through the whole up and down and roller coaster where things are better. I'm just talking about the steady decline, which will be the overall trend of a relationship where self-worth is, or self-love is, completely missing from it. So, disaster story. I'm not saying that's how it's going to go if you don't have self-love, but I think you get where I'm coming from. Now, you may well have been listening to me thinking, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, self-love's got to be important, but there are so many other elements of a relationship that have to be there. What about honesty, respect, communication, passion, things like that? Well, let me go through them and explain why they are taken care of already. Honesty. If you've reached a point of self-love, then you'll have reached a point where you're able to be 100% honest with yourself. And if you're able to be 100% honest with yourself, then you're able to be 100% honest with other people as well. So that's honesty ticked off. Loyalty. Someone who has attained kind of self-love mastery will have set themselves the boundaries they need to set them, and they've got their core values set in place so that when they go into a relationship, they will only be getting into a relationship that is going to serve them, that is going to match what they are after, and is going to match with their level of self-love. So they are going to be loyal because they're not going to enter into something unless it's going to serve their needs. And if their needs are met, they won't need to look anywhere else. Respect. you will struggle to find a more respectful person than the person who has gone through everything and come out of the other side loving themselves. Because love and respect are very, very closely kind of linked together. So if you've got self-love, you have self-respect. If you have self-respect, again, you can give that respect out just as much as you can give it to yourself. Passion. The person who has mastered self-love will know exactly what they want. They know exactly what ticks all of their boxes, and they will know what lights a fire in their belly. And not only that, they will love the idea of lighting that fire in the belly of someone they care about deeply. So passion is never going to be a problem with someone who has mastered self-love. Communication. People who have gone through like a self-love journey, I really hate it makes it sound all fluffy. It doesn't have to be fluffy, all this self-love stuff. People who have gone through that have had incredibly honest levels of communication, maybe with a therapist or counsellor, but ultimately with themselves, however they've gone through it. They will have had conversations and communication with themselves deeply about different elements about themselves. So they are going to be able to communicate their needs, their wants, their issues, all of that stuff very, very well because they've been through it with themselves. So communication, very much taken care of. Summing up. Take the time to find self-love. When you feel good enough, when you feel self-acceptance and self-love, you will know that nothing will ever allow you to feel like a, inverted commas, lesser than person ever again. When self-love is in place, you will recognize what you're willing to accept moving forwards. You will set out your red line boundaries, things which you're not going to be willing to accept or not accept, and things which cannot be crossed. And if someone crosses those boundaries, you will have the ability to stand up for yourself and say, hang on a minute, that is not something I'm willing to accept. You will stand there proudly at your boundary saying, no, this is my boundary. I'm not moving away from this because I love myself too much and I accept myself perfectly, so I cannot allow myself to be pushed back from this boundary. When you come out of a relationship, it's an absolute perfect time to look back at that relationship, reflect upon it, and analyze what went wrong. What did you accept that you really, really shouldn't have accepted? Where were you pushed? Where were you pulled? Where did you push? Where did you pull? You need to find out exactly who you are outside of that relationship. Because if you don't, then what happens is that when you jump into that next relationship, you will take up the role that you have learnt to be in. So if you were in this role before in this relationship, you will jump naturally into that role again. And you know where that got you to. By taking the time to accept yourself, to love yourself, and to realize everything about you and, start to understand what your own wants and needs are and what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept, and just making sure that you're taking care of yourself. Doing all that means that you will go into your next relationship in the healthiest way that you could possibly imagine being in a relationship. And that will give that relationship the very best chance of success. Now, if you'd like to have a chat with me one-on-one to find out about learning to love yourself, going through this process, then do get in touch. Completely free, exploratory chat. We can just talk things over, see where you're at, and if you're interested in taking things further with life coaching or hypnotherapy, then we can do that. Really hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'll catch you again soon.